Hello, everyone. How are we? Let me turn this up a little bit more. Hopefully, it's not super loud. Um, it is I, your Lady Divine, and it has been a minute since I have um read anything, like read a story, just read, wrote, all of the things. So I do miss it. So we are going to bring it back with the art of seduction. I made a video and about like if y'all wanted me to do it tonight or tomorrow. So far somebody selected tonight at 10, so we're gonna go ahead and do it. I'm gonna honor it since that was the first answer. But depending on how this goes, this may end up on my YouTube channel. So if you missed the live recording, it will be posted on the YouTube shortly thereafter. Okay. Um, Outside of that, we're gonna get started. We're just gonna read one chapter, um, one section, because I don't want it to be like too long. Because I gotta get on Twitch. So give me one second because we're gonna change the picture. And this is the topic, or this is the one we're gonna do tonight. The Coquette. Okay? So hopefully y'all can see it. All right. And I will be checking in between like pages, like for the comments and stuff. So like I'm not ignoring y'all, but I think we should be good for the most part. Okay. So the Coquette. The ability to delay satisfaction is the ultimate art of seduction. While waiting, the victim is held in thrall. Coquettes are the grand master of this game, orchestrating a back and forth movement between hope and frustration. They bait with the promise of reward, the hope of physical pleasure, happiness, fame by association, power, all of which, however, prove elusive. Yet this only makes the targets pursue them the more. Coquettes seem totally self sufficient. They do not need you, they seem to say, and their narcissism proves devilishly attractive. You want to conquer them, but they hold the cards. They hold the cards. The strategy of the coquette is to never offer total satisfaction. Imitate the altering heat and coolness of the coquette, and you'll keep the seduced at your heels. So that is the coquette. Okay, so let's get into it. All right. So we have the hot and cold coquette. In the autumn of 1795, Paris was quite up in strange giddiness. The reign of terror that had followed the French Revolution had ended. The sound of the guillotine was gone. The city breathed a collective sigh of relief and gave way to wild parties and endless festivals. The young Napoleon Bonaparte, 26 at the time, had no interest in such revelries. He had made a name for himself as a bright, audacious general who had helped to quell rebellion in the provinces, but his ambition was boundless and he burned with a desire for new conquest. So when in October of that year, the infamous 33-year-old widow, Josephine de Behar, ooh, I just had her name, Beharness, visited his office, he couldn't help but be confused. Josephine was so exotic, and everything about her was languorous and sensual. She capitalized on her foreignness. She came from the island of Martinique. On the other hand, she had a reputation as a loose woman, and the shy Napoleon believed in marriage. Even so, when Josephine invited him to one of the weekly soirees, he found himself accepting. At the soiree, he felt totally out of his element. All of the city's great rioters and wits were there, as well as a few of the nobility who had survived. Josephine herself was a vicomtesse. and had narrowly escaped the guillotine. The women were dazzling, some of them more beautiful than the hostess, but all the men congregated around Josephine, drawn by her graceful presence and queenly manner. Several times she had left the men behind and went to Napoleon's side. Nothing could have flattered his insecure ego more than such attention. He began to pay her visits. Sometimes she would ignore him and he would leave in a fit of anger. Yet the next day, a passionate letter would arrive from Josephine and he would rush to see her. Soon, he was spending most of his time with her. Her occasional shows of sadness, her bouts of anger or of tears only deepened his attachment. In March of 1796, Napoleon married Josephine. 2 days after his wedding, Napoleon left to lead campaign in the northern Italy against the Austrians. "You are the constant object of my thoughts," he wrote to his wife from abroad. "My imagination exhausts itself, guessing what you are doing." His generals saw him distracted, and he would leave meetings early, spend hours writing letters, or stare at the miniature of Josephine he wore around his neck. He had been driven to such a state by the unbearable distance between them, and by a slight coldness he now detected in her. She wrote infrequently, and her letters lacked passion, nor did she join him in Italy. He had to finish his war fast so that he could return to her side. Engaging the enemy with unusual zeal, he began to make mistakes. "To live for Josephine," he wrote to her, "I work to get near you. I kill myself to reach you." His letter became more passionate and erotic. A friend of Josephine's who saw them wrote, "The handwriting was almost indecipherable, the spelling shaking, the style bizarre and confused. What a position for a woman to find herself in, being the motivating force behind the triumphant march of an entire army." Months went by in which Napoleon begged Josephine to come to Italy, and she made endless excuses. But finally she agreed to come and left Paris for Brescia, where he headquartered. A near encounter with the enemy along the way, however, forced her to detour to Milan. Napoleon was away from Brescia in battle. When he returned to find her still absent, he blamed his foe General Wursmir and swore revenge. For the next few months, he seemed to pursue two targets with equal energy: Wursmir and Josephine. His wife, his wife was never where she was supposed to be. "I reached Milan, rushed to your home, having thrown aside everything in order to clasp you in my arms, yet you are not here." Napoleon would turn angry and jealous, but when he finally caught up with Josephine, the slightest of her favors melted his heart. He took long rides with her in the darkened carriage while his generals fumed. fumed. Meetings were missed, orders and strategies improvised. "Never," he later wrote to her, "has a woman been in such complete mastery of another's heart." And yet their time together was so short. During a campaign that lasted almost a month, almost a year, Napoleon spent a mere 15 nights with his new bride. Napoleon later had heard rumor that Josephine had taken a lover while he was in Italy. His feelings toward her cooled, and he himself took an endless series of mistresses. Yet Josephine was never really concerned about this threat of her power over her husband. A few tears, some theatrics, a little coldness on her part, and he remained her slave. In 1804, he had her crowned empress, and she had borne him a son. She would have remained empress to the end. When Napoleon laid on his deathbed, the last word he would utter was Josephine. During the French Revolution, Josephine had come within minutes of losing her head on the guillotine. The experience left her without illusions and two small goals in mind: to live a life of pleasure and to find a man who would best supply it. She set her sights on Napoleon early on. He was young and had a brilliant future. Beneath his calm exterior, Josephine sensed he was highly emotional and aggressive, but this did not intimidate her. It only revealed his insecurities and weakness. He would be easy to enslave. First, Josephine adapted to his moods, charmed him with her female grace, warmed him with her looks and manner. He wanted to possess her. And once she had aroused this desire, her power lay in postponing its satisfaction, withdrawing from him, frustrating him. In fact, the torture of the chase gave Napoleon a masochistic pleasure. He yearned to subdue her independent spirit as if she were an enemy in battle. People were inherently perverse. An easy conquest has a lower value than a difficult one. We are only really excited by what is denied us, but when we cannot possess in full. Your greatest power in seduction is in your ability to turn away, to make others come after you, delaying their satisfaction. Most people miscalculate and surrender too soon, worried that the other person will lose interest or that giving the other what he or she wants, will grant the giver some kind of power. The truth is the opposite. Once you satisfy someone, you no longer have the initiative and you open yourself up to the possibility that he or she will lose interest at the slightest whim. Remember, vanity is critical in love. Make your targets afraid that you may be withdrawing and that you may not really be interested, and you arouse their innate insecurities. Their fear that you've gotten to know them and they have become less exciting to you. These insecurities are devastating. Then, once you have made them uncertain of you and of themselves, reignite their hope, making them feel desired again. Hot and cold, hot and cold. Such coquetry is perversely pleasurable, heightening interest and keeping an initiative on your side. Never be put off by your target's anger. It is a sure sign of enslavement. She who would long retain her power must use her lovers ill. Interesting. I feel like with this, I don't see Josephine quite as like the bad guy per se, because he pursued her. He wanted her enough to marry her, and she didn't have to do much. Even on his deathbed, she still had this man in a chokehold. Like, if you think about it, it's honestly to have that kind of power over someone and wonder, and I wonder how, I can't even say it. It's like a power exchange, I feel. So like in terms of BDSM, you are willingly giving someone power, dominance over you, and they do with that what they will, driving you crazy. Because it's like, you don't know, like, what are you going to do to me? What are you going to do to me? And it's like, it keeps you on your toes. I feel like, because I was picking up obviously I was picking up talking in a British accent earlier, but even now the accent is changing. This is, I feel like I'm picking up someone who could have Irish roots or Welsh or Scottish roots, Celtic, somewhere over there where it's like very, very lush and grassy and like think Britannia, the Fey creatures and such. But the Coquette also kind of reminds me of um, Lolita, I believe. So, like, this kind of reminds me of do y'all remember the anime Wallflower with Sunaka Nakahara, Kyohei, Ranmaru, Yuki, and what was Noi? What was fuck. Vic Minaga voiced one of, I forgot his character's name, damn, but his character had the blue hair anyway, and it'd be the Goth Loli sisters, Goth, Loli, Loli. Them girls were weird. Damn, but people just like, it's the Goth Loli sisters. Goth, Loli, Loli. Like, what? But anyway, it's giving like that's not really like the best example of what I'm thinking of Coquette. So Black Butler, the Green Witch, and the Werewolf, that's the attire. Coquette, I believe it's the attire that I'm thinking of. But like that the Coquette Lolita, I guess is what it is. Because I feel like that's where we're gonna come into this cold Coquette. Like very like, oh, so it's giving like very snobbish. Like, because you know how they say, like, you have to be a little mean to men. Like, you gotta put a little fear in their heart. You gotta be a little mean to men because they like it. They like it when you're mean to them. And I feel like for someone of you, like with the Coquette, you could be not necessarily like a black cat, but like you could be very snobbish or like very uppity. And like, we've got to keep this monetized. Like, we can't just be talking crazy. But this is not for minors. But like, it's giving like, what's the so okay in the adult Japanese animations, okay, we know where we're going with this pervert, right? That's the name for it, and the language that we're talking about here. It's the is that the Tsundere or the Yandere, or it's the one that's like okay. So think about this is so crazy. Follow me. Think about how Noelle from not Black Butler, Jesus, Black Clover, Tamaki from Fire Force. Think about their personalities, how like mean they are, right? Like Noah's like, I'm royalty, and Tamaki's like, she thinks she's like better than everybody else, but like both of them ain't shit in the very beginning. Like their attitudes are horrible, but I feel like they like men like that when you're mean to them slightly. Some of y'all could have somebody that's like the type of partnership that you want where like you can be mean and it's not like you're putting on an act. It's like you're just finally allowing your true self to come out, and this is just how you are naturally, but like you've been shunned and made to feel bad about how you naturally are. But there's like someone out there for you, be this a relationship as far as like platonic, like romantic, whatever partnership, BDSM, like bond, play friend, whatever type of dynamic this is for you to get resonates, right? I feel like the person that you are gonna meet or engage with, or whatever term we're gonna use, is like they like that. So think, okay. Um, the anime with the ogre bride, Tenjinya, Aoi Subaki, right? How she went to the season 2 when she went to the Southern Realm, or yeah, where they had the beach and stuff. How the one guy, I think he's like a masochist where he likes being like stepped on and stuff by the one girl, by the one chick, the one Ayakashi. Like he loves, like he waits on her hand and foot because he loves like how she treats him. I feel like that's the relationship that this is, and it just like works for y'all. And so like you are, there's that back and forth where like you're hot and cold. And I don't know. Okay, so look, so I used to listen to this one ASMR person. He goes by Deep Dark, and I'm not gonna lie, like, I mean, granted, like when there's a lot of like ASMR artists out there and stuff like that, some of the material tends to kind of like be reused or whatever, right? Because people come up with like some really amazing tropes and stuff. So of course it's gonna like, pick up, so people want to do it and try it out and stuff. But I swear he kind of reminds me of YSF, except his voice isn't like deep. Like Deep Dark's voice has a certain rasp to it, like, but you can hear the way he becomes unhinged. Cause like he starts off very like golden retriever, like submissive, like sweet boy type of thing, but then like when he snaps from like your attitude and the way that you treat him and all that, like when he loses his shit, like that unhinged behavior comes out, and like he like y'all are going at it, but like because the coquette is giving very much like you think, like who gave you permission, like you think um you think like degrading like how small his dick is, even though he's like hung like a horse, like denying like that it feels good, right? Like that fight, like it's like bratty at the same time. Like I don't know how to explain it. It's it's like it's a back and forth where like you treat him this way because you know when he snaps, he's going to give you what you want. And you've asked for what you want repeatedly, and he hasn't given you what you wanted. So it's like now you have to take matters into your own hands, even though it's like at the end of it, you get what you want, but it's like, did we really have to go through all of this? But I think it's the slow burn, the buildup of like knowing that this is what's going to happen if we keep going down this path. And I think it's something like very sexy about that. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get to the cold coquette. Okay. In 1952, the writer Truman Capote, a recent success in literary and social circles, began to receive an almost daily barrage of fan mail from a young man named Andy Warhol, an illustrator for shoe designs, fashion magazines, and the like. Warhol made pretty stylized drawings, some of which he sent to Capote, hoping the author would include them in one of his books. Capote did not respond. One day he came home to find Warhol talking to his mother, with whom Capote lived, and Warhol began to telephone almost daily. Finally, Capote put an end to all this. He seemed one to just hope a hopeless born loser, the writer later said. 10 years later, Andy Warhol, aspiring artist, had his first one-man show in the Stable Gallery of Manhattan. On the walls were a series of silk-screen paintings based on a Campbell soup in the Coca-Cola bottle. And in the opening of the party afterward, Warhol stood on the side of the staring blankly, talking little. What a contrast he was to the older generation of artists and abstract expressionists, mostly hard drinking womanizers full of bluster and aggression, big talker who dominated the art for scene the previous 15 years. And what changed from the Warhol who had badgered Capote, an art dealer and patron as well? The critics were both baffled and intrigued by the coldness of Warhol's work. They could not figure out how the artist felt about his subjects. What was his position? What was he trying to say? When they asked, he would simply just reply, I just do it because I like it. Or I love soup. The critics went wild with their interpretations, and art like Warhol's is necessarily parasitic upon the myth of its time, one author wrote. Another, the decision is not to decide in the paradox that equal is an idea which expresses sound nothing, but then gives its dimension. The show was a huge success, establishing Warhol as a leading figure in a new movement, pop art. In 1963, Warhol rented a large Manhattan loft space that he called the Factory, and then soon became a hub for large entourage, hangers-on, actors, aspiring artists. Here, particularly at night, Warhol would simply wander about and stand in a corner. People would gather around him, fight for his attention, throw questions at him, and he would answer in his non-committal way. But no one could get close to him physically or mentally. He would not allow it. At the same time, if he walked by without giving you a glance, At the same time, if he walked by you without giving you his usual oh hi, you were devastated. He hadn't noticed you, perhaps you were on your way out. And increasingly interested in filmmaking, Warhol cast his friends in his movies. And in fact, he was offering them a kind of instant celebrity, their 15 minutes of fame. The phrase is Warhol's. Soon people were competing for roles. He groomed women in particular for stardom. Eddie Sedgwick, Viva, Nico. Just being around him offered a kind of celebrity by association. The Factory, the place that had been seen in the stars like Judy Garland and Tennessee Williams, would go to parties there, rubbing elbows with Sedgwick, Viva, and the bohemian lower echelons whom Warhol had befriended. People would People began sending limos to bring him to parties to their own. His presence alone was enough to turn a social evening into a scene, even though he would pass through near silence, keeping to himself and leaving early. 1 second, y'all, it's gotten hot. Drink break. Water break, okay. In 1967, Warhol was asked to lecture at various colleges. He hated to talk, particularly about his own art. The less something has to say, he felt, the more perfect it is. But the money was good, and Warhol always found it hard to say no. His solution was simple. He asked an actor, Alan Midget, to impersonate him. Midget was a dark-haired, tan, part Cherokee Indian. He did not resemble Warhol in the least, but Warhol and friends covered his face with powder, sprayed his hair brown, His brown hair silver, gave him dark glasses, and dressed him in Warhol's clothes. Since Midget knew nothing about art, his answers to students' questions tended to be short and enigmatic, as Warhol's own. The impersonation worked. Warhol may have been an icon, but no one really knew him. And since he often wore dark glasses, even his face was unfamiliar in any detail. The lecture audiences were far away enough to be teased by the thought of his presence, and no one got close enough to quite catch the deception. He remained elusive. Early on in life, Andy Warhol was plagued by conflicting emotions. He desperately wanted fame, but he was naturally passive and shy. I've always had a conflict, he said, because I'm shy and yet I like to take up a lot of personal space. Mom always said, don't be pushy, but let everyone know you're around. At first, Warhol tried to make himself more aggressive, straining to please and to court. It didn't work. After 10 futile years, he stopped trying to give in to his own passivity, only to discover the power that withdrawal commands. Warhol began this process in his artwork, which changed dramatically in the early 1960s. His new paintings of soup cans and grain stamps and other widely known objects did not assault you with meaning. In fact, their meaning was totally elusive, which only heightened their fascination. They drew you in immediately by their visual power, their coldness. Having transformed his art, Warhol had transformed himself. Like his paintings, he became pure surface. He trained himself to hold himself back, to stop talking. The world is full of people who try, people who impose themselves aggressively. They may gain temporary victories, but the longer they are around, the more people want to confound them. They leave no space around themselves, and without space, there can be no seduction. Coquette creates space by creating elusive and making others pursue them. Their coolness suggests a comfortable confidence that is exciting to be around, even though it may not actually exist. Their silence makes you want to talk. Their self-containment, their appearance of having no need for other people only makes us want to do things for them, hungry for the slightest sign of recognition and favor. Cold coquettes may be maddening to deal with, never committing but never saying no, never allowing closeness, but more often than not, we find ourselves coming back to them, addicted to the coldness they project. Remember, seduction is a process of dealing people in, making them want to pursue and possess you. Seem distant and people will go mad to win you a favor. Humans, like nature, hate a vacuum and emotional distance, and silence makes them strain to fill up the empty space with words and heat on their own. Like Warhol, stand back and let them fight over you. Before we get to the next page, and I don't know, I might stop here tonight. Well, we're almost done, but I feel like I might stop. I don't want to give it all away, but I will say this. When we talk about, I'm talking about this with the Cold Coquette and how, let me go back to it. But more often than not, we find ourselves coming back to them, addicted to the coldness they project. Why, when we think about that, right? And I think when I listen to it, and I try not to like break everything down, but sometimes I just feel like I have to say it, I have to speak on it. So, why is it that why is it that when we get into relationships, and I'm gonna just say we collectively as a people, and if you've never been in a relationship, this is something to think about, okay? And if you're not currently in a relationship or you just got out of a relationship, this is something for you to think about as well before you go back to that raggedy ass ex. Okay. Always remember why somebody is your ex first and foremost. With that being said, when you are dating somebody who is just blatantly cold, and I think this is where sometimes it gets mixed up or misconstrued, there is a subtle art of seduction when it comes to a coquette style of person, but that is not to be confused with somebody who was blatantly respecting you, blatantly being cold to you, blatantly being rude to you, and them not, you know, they're not being anything established, right? Because BDSM, art of seduction, it's a game, it's a choice, right? You can choose this lifestyle. You can choose to enter this lifestyle. Now, some of us are born into this lifestyle or have just been, we were exposed to it and didn't know we were exposed to it. Not to say that we were groomed into anything, that's not what I'm saying. But there's something that about each of these things that calls to you because you have been the different versions of yourself have been different characters from the art of seduction. You've been the lover, you've been the rake, you've been the siren, you've been the natural, you've been the dandy, you've been the coquette, you've been the anti-seducer, you've been the star. You have been each of these are these characters in a life. So some of these will ring true to you a lot more than others, right? With that, when you break up with somebody, why is it that you want to go back to them? When you tell somebody that you want space, when you say you want to end things, and that person respects your space, respects what you said, why are we trying to reach back out to that person and then getting mad that they don't respond when they are honoring the boundaries that you set? It took me a very long time to really kind of come to terms with some things, but I feel like at the end of the day, it was something that I needed to do, even if I went about it in a I the way that I went about it, this is the way that you go about something when you are winging it. Like you have no idea what you're doing, you're just doing it. You're just like it's like when you finally get it's like when you've got all this built up anger, all this built up aggression, all this built up energy, and it's like now that you finally have an outlet or a place to let go, it's like you don't even want to let go and you don't even want to let go like that anymore. It's like um it just lost its luster. It's nothing like you've lost your hot air. And I think we're so used to taking somebody back or people taking us back because they don't have standards, because they don't respect themselves, because they think that, oh, all I gotta do is say I'm sorry and I can get back in their good graces. No, no, that's not how this works. And I've done that to someone and had it done to me. I didn't realize the severity or I didn't realize what I was doing. But in hindsight and retrospect, looking back on it, I would have handled it differently, but I still would have ended the dynamic because it was one-sided. When you can't talk to the very people that say that they're your friends, or you don't feel safe, or you feel like you would be judged, or you feel like you you just feel like you just can't truly talk to those people without them judging you in some way, shape, or form. It's almost worse than you being by yourself because it's what is that saying? I could be in a room full of people and still feel alone. It's like that, except it's worse because you have somebody that you can talk to, but you don't feel safe enough to talk to them because they've not shown you that they're a safe space for you, or they showed you that they weren't a space, that they were not a safe space for you, but you don't know what to do because you've got time and with them. Y'all been friends for a while, right? There's a lot that goes into this. There's a lot that goes into this. And I think we've got to remember to put ourselves first, to figure out what it is that we want. All right, let's go ahead and keep going. So I'll read this first section and then we'll wrap it up for tonight. All right, so keys to the chapter, or character, sorry. According to the popular concepts, coquettes are consummates, teases, experts at arousing desire through the provocative appearance or an alluring attitude. But the real essence of coquettes is the fact that their ability to trap people emotionally and to keep their victims in their clutches long after the first titillation of desire. This is the skill that puts them in the ranks after the first. Hold on, we done ran through. This is the skill that puts them in the ranks of the most effective seducers. Their success may seem somewhat odd since they are essentially cold and distant creatures. Should you ever get to know one well, you will sense his or her inner core of detachment and self-love. It may seem logical that once you become aware of the quality, you see through the coquette's manipulations and lose interest. But more often, we see the opposite. After years of Josephine's coquettish games, Napoleon was well aware of how manipulative she was, yet this conqueror of kingdoms, this skeptic and cynic, could not leave her. To understand the peculiar power of the coquette, you must first understand a critical property of love and desire. The more obviously you pursue a person, the more likely you are to chase them away. Too much attention can be interesting for a while, but it soon grows cloying and finally becomes claustrophobic and frightening. It signals weakness and neediness and an unseductive combination. How often can we make the mistake thinking one persistent presence will reassure? But coquettes have the inherent understanding of this particular dynamic. What the fuck was that? Oh shit. Where was I? I done lost my train of thought, y'all. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and, well, not lost my train of thought, I lost where I was. So we're gonna go ahead and call it a night. I hope that y'all enjoyed this little reading with me. Yeah, I just wanted to just come up here and kind of just give y'all a quick little thing. Nothing too much. Yeah, it's like almost my bedtime. But yeah, like I said, I will go ahead and I'll be uploading this to my YouTube. So it'll be there. Was there anything else? I think that's it, honestly. Alrighty, I will see y'all later. Bye.